Off the rugged coast of Maine, where weather-beaten boats dot the harbor and salt-worn fishermen battle nature daily for their survival, Jack O'Connor's small fishing boat barely keeps him afloat financially. For 15 years, he's weathered every storm alone, watching his dreams slowly sink beneath mounting debts and endless setbacks. But on this rain-lashed afternoon, as thunder crashes overhead, he spots something in the churning waves that will test everything he knows about: fate and second chances. What he pulls from those deadly waters isn't just a drowning stranger. It's a mystery that will ripple through his entire life. Could this rescue be the moment that changes everything? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The salt-crusted photograph sat in its usual spot above Jack's helm, protected from the elements by a scratched plastic sleeve that had yellowed with age. In it, a younger version of himself stood proudly beside his father, both grinning broadly. On the deck of their first boat together, the Mary Louise, named after Jack's mother. The image was fading now, much like the fishing industry that had sustained 3 generations of O'Connors. Jack traced the familiar morning routine he'd followed for 15 years: check the weather, inspect the gear, and head out before dawn. His boat, the second chance, needed work. They all did these days. But she was seaworthy enough to get the job done. The cramped cabin still smelled of yesterday's catch and coffee gone cold. "Morning, Jackie boy," Harold McKinnon's voice carried across the quiet harbor. The older fisherman was already loading his boat, the Lucky Penny, though luck had been in short supply lately. "Heard the base are running near Mitchell's Point." "Thanks, Harold." Jack nodded, knowing the tip was Harold's way of looking out. And for him, the harbor community took care of its own, even as their numbers dwindled year by year. 20 years ago, the docks had been crowded with fishing boats. Now half the slips stood empty, and for sale signs dotted the waterfront properties like seagulls on pilings. The bank notice in his pocket weighed heavier than any anchor. 3rd warning this month. The numbers didn't lie. He was 3 bad months away from losing everything. The corporate fishing operations kept pushing further into their waters, their massive trawlers scooping up entire schools of fish, while small operations like his scraped by on the leftovers. Jack fired up the engine, its familiar sputter a reminder that every piece of equipment on board needed maintenance he couldn't afford. The photograph caught the morning light, and for a moment he saw his father's face clearly. The same determined set of the jaw, the same weathered creases around, the eyes that Jack now saw in his own reflection. "We'll figure it out, Dad," he muttered, a daily ritual as automatic as checking his gear, "just like you always did." The harbor's channel markers guided him out past the breakwater, where the first rays of sun painted the horizon in shades of promise. A lone seabird wheeled overhead, its cry carrying across waters that had provided for his family since before he was born. But the sea was changing, or maybe it was the world around it that had changed. Either way, Jack knew he was part of a dying breed, the independent fisherman, the last holdout against a tide of progress that threatened to wash away everything he'd ever known. His radio crackled with the day's weather report. Small craft. Advisory by afternoon, but he'd worked through worse. He had to. The alternative was unthinkable. Joining the ranks of former fishermen who now gave harbor tours to tourists or worked security at the new marina complex being built on the North Shore. The morning stretched ahead, full of possibility and uncertainty, in equal measure, just like every other morning in recent memory. But something felt different today. A charge in the air that went beyond the approaching weather system. Jack checked his nets one last time and set course for Mitchell's Point, hoping Harold's tip would pan out. One good catch wouldn't solve everything, but it might buy him enough time to figure out a longer-term solution. Behind him, the town of Port Haven grew smaller, its familiar skyline a reminder of everything he was fighting to preserve. Not just his own livelihood, but a way of life that had sustained this community for generations. The photograph's edges curled slightly in the morning humidity, his father's confident smile a silent witness to another day at sea. The old radio sputtered and crackled, its weather-beaten casing held together with duct tape and stubborn determination. Jack adjusted the dial, trying to clear the static from the weather update. Harold's tip about Mitchell's Point had paid off. His nets were heavy with bass, the best catch he'd had in weeks. But the darkening sky to the southeast worried him. Repeat, storm warning upgraded. All vessels advised to seek immediate shelter. Wind gusts expected to reach 50 knots. Wave heights. Static swallowed the rest of the message. But Jack had heard enough. He glanced at his nets, still half full in the water. An hour more and he could complete the haul. The massive shape of a corporate trawler appeared on the horizon, its steel hull dwarfing his modest vessel. "This is the Atlantic Pioneer," a clipped voice announced over the radio. "All vessels in Grid Sector 7, be advised we're beginning our sweep." The corporate boats never waited out storms. They just moved to different waters, their advanced equipment telling them exactly where to find the fish. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. One more hour. The catch in his nets would cover this month's loan payment, maybe with enough left over for the overdue repairs. The first fat droplets of rain struck the wheelhouse windows as distant thunder rolled across the water. "Jackie, you reading this?" Harold's voice crackled through the radio. "Storms moving faster than they said. You need to get out of there, boy." Dark clouds boiled overhead, transforming afternoon into an eerie twilight. The wind had picked up, churning the surface into white-capped swells that slapped against the hull. Jack began hauling in his nets, knowing he was cutting it close. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "The sea gives, but she takes too. A smart fisherman knows when to call it a day." The first serious wave caught the boat broadside, sending crates sliding across the deck. Jack scrambled to secure them, cold spray stinging his face. That's when he saw it, a flash of color in the water that didn't belong. He squinted through the rain, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks. There it was again, something bright orange bobbing between the swells. Too far out to be a buoy. The radio crackled once more, but this time no voice emerged through the static. Another wave rocked the boat, and Jack lost sight of the mysterious object. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the water in stark relief. His heart stopped. That wasn't a buoy or debris. It was a life jacket, and someone was wearing it. The person vanished behind a swell, reappearing seconds later even further from the boat. They weren't swimming. They were being pulled out by the current. Jack grabbed. His radio, but only static, answered his mayday call. The corporate trawler had disappeared into the gloom, probably already heading for safe harbor. "Hold on!" he shouted into the wind, knowing the person couldn't possibly hear him. The boat's engine roared as he turned into the waves, each swell, now hitting the bow instead of the beam. His father had taught him how to handle storms. You respect them, you work with them, but you never let them work you. The rain was falling in sheets now, reducing visibility to mere yards. Jack strained his eyes, searching for another glimpse of orange in the grey wasteland. There, about 50 yards out. The figure had stopped moving, arms barely breaking the surface. His nets were still half in the water, dragging against the turn. No time to bring them in. Jack grabbed his knife and reached for the ropes. Thousands of dollars of equipment and catch about to be sacrificed. His father's voice again. "No fish is worth a human life." The blades sliced through the first rope as thunder cracked overhead. The stranger in the water had disappeared again, but Jack had their position marked in his mind. He cut the second rope, felt the boat surge forward as it shed its burden. "Just hold on," he whispered, though whether to the person in the water or himself, he wasn't sure. Just hold on. The life preserver hung by the wheelhouse door, where it had been since Jack bought the boat. Pristine white with "second chance" stenciled in fading blue letters. He'd never had to use it before. Now, as he snatched it from its mount, the foam felt rough under his fingers, hardened by years of salt air. Waves crashed over the bow as he maneuvered closer to where he'd last seen the orange life jacket. The boat fought him, wanting to turn broadside to the wind. Every lesson his father had taught him about handling rough seas ran through his mind like a litany. Keep the bow into the waves, watch for rogue swells, maintain steady power. "Where are you?" he muttered, scanning the churning water. A flash of lightning revealed nothing but angry seas. Had he lost them? The current could have dragged them hundreds of yards by now. The weight of failure pressed against his chest. He couldn't lose someone out here? Not on his watch. Then he saw them, an arm raised weakly above the waves, barely visible through the rain. The figure was face down now, the orange life jacket keeping them afloat but doing nothing to protect against the numbing cold of the North Atlantic. Jack threw the engine into neutral, timing his move with the swells. One wrong calculation and he'd hit the person with his hull. He grabbed the life preserver and coiled rope, muscles tense with anticipation. The next lightning flash showed the person less than 20 feet from his starboard side. "Hey!" he shouted into the wind. "I'm going to throw you a line!" No response. The figure wasn't moving anymore, just drifting with each wave. Jack hefted, the life preserver calculating the throw against the wind. His father's voice, "You get one chance in conditions like these, make it count." The line flew true, landing just beyond the floating figure. Jack pulled it in slowly, drawing the preserver closer until it bumped against the life jacket. But the person didn't move to grab it. No. Jack secured the wheel and grabbed his rescue hook. He'd have to do this the hard way. The deck pitched beneath his feet as he made his way to the rail, waves breaking over the gunwale and soaking him to the skin. One hand on the rail, he reached out with the hook, trying to snag the life jacket. The first attempt missed. On the second, the hook caught fabric. Jack pulled, arms straining against the weight of waterlogged clothing and dead weight. As the figure drew alongside, he could see it was a woman, her face pale and lips tinged blue. Getting her aboard nearly broke him. Twice he almost lost his grip, and once a wave almost took them both over the side. But somehow, remembering every maritime rescue training session he'd ever attended, he managed to haul her onto the deck. She wasn't breathing. Jack rolled her onto her side, letting water drain from her mouth. His CPR certification was years old, but the basics came back as he positioned her flat on the deck, protecting her head from the rolling boat. "Come on," he urged, beginning compressions. "Don't you give up on me." 15 compressions, 2 breaths. The storm raged around them as he worked, his world narrowing to this simple, desperate rhythm. She was young, he realized, probably early 30s, wearing expensive sailing gear beneath the life jacket. What was she doing out here alone? Another set of compressions, 2 more breaths. Lightning flashed, thunder boomed, and suddenly she convulsed, coughing up seawater. Jack rolled her onto her side again, supporting her as she gasped and retched. "You're okay," he said, though she probably couldn't hear him over the storm. "You're safe now." Her eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing a startling shade of green before rolling back as she lost consciousness again. But she was breathing. On her own, her pulse steady under his fingers. The life preserver lay forgotten on the deck, its rope tangled around them both like some maritime umbilical cord. Jack gathered her in his arms and fought his way back to the wheelhouse. Questions could wait. Right now, he had to get them both back to harbor before the storm claimed 2 lives instead of none. The golden locket tumbled from her waterlogged jacket as Jack helped the paramedics transfer her to the gurney. It landed on the dock with a metallic ping, nearly skittering through a gap between the planks before he caught it. The delicate chain was broken, probably torn loose during the rescue. "She's hypothermic but stable," the lead paramedic reported, securing an IV line. "You did good work out there, Jack. Not many would have risked that rescue in these conditions." Jack barely heard him, his attention caught by the inscription on the locket's surface. To Sophia, all my love, Dad. Below it, elegant characters, in what looked like Chinese, completed the message. The clasp was jammed with salt, but he could feel something loose inside. Sir? A police officer approached, notebook in hand. We'll need your statement about the rescue. Yeah, of course. Jack pocketed the locket, watching as they loaded the woman, Sophia, into the ambulance. The storm still raged beyond the breakwater, but here in the harbour the worst had passed. His nets and catch were gone, but he'd made the right choice. The only choice, really. Harold appeared at his elbow, pressed a steaming cup of coffee into his hands. Whole town's talking already. Harbourmaster says there's no record of any distress calls, no reports of missing boats or crews. She just appeared out of nowhere. Jack sipped the coffee, letting its warmth chase away some of the bone-deep chill. The rescue played on repeat in his mind. Her pale face, those startling green eyes. Someone has to be looking for her. Well, they'll find her at County General now. Harold squinted at the dispersing crowd. Those weren't standard sailing clothes she was wearing. That was high-end gear, professional stuff, a flash of memory. The corporate trawler disappearing into the storm. Had she somehow gone overboard from one of those boats? But they would have reported it, launched their own rescue. Mr. O'Connor. A new voice, cultured and authoritative. Jack turned to find a man in an expensive raincoat, flanked by two others in dark suits. I'm Richard Maxwell, General Counsel for Chen Global Maritime. We understand you rescued one of our employees. The name triggered something in Jack's memory. Chen Global, the corporate giant buying up fishing rights all along the coast. Their trawlers were just the visible part of a multinational operation that was reshaping the industry. Is that who she is? One of yours? The locket seemed to grow heavier in his pocket. Those Chinese characters. Ms. Chen was conducting a routine inspection of our regional operations when her transport encountered difficulties. Maxwell's expression gave nothing away. The company is extremely grateful for your heroic actions. If you'll accompany us to the hospital, Ms. Chen's father would like to thank you personally. Jack's mind raced. Not just an employee, Chen's daughter. He'd pulled the heir to one of the world's largest fishing companies from the ocean, the same company that was slowly strangling independent operations like his. I need to secure my boat, he said, buying time to think. The locket felt like a hot coal now. And give my statement to the police. Maxwell produced a business card, thick, cream-colored stock with embossed gold lettering. Of course, please call this number when you're finished. A car will be waiting. To take you to the hospital. His eyes lingered on Jack's weathered jacket and salt-stained boots. Perhaps we could have something more suitable brought for you to wear. Pride warred with practicality in Jack's chest. These people represented everything that was killing his way of life, but he couldn't stop thinking about those green eyes, the way she'd fought for life under his hands. My clothes are fine, he said finally. I'll call when I'm done here. Maxwell nodded, already turning away. Very good. Oh, and Mr. O'Connor, if you happen to come across any of Ms. Chen's personal effects during the rescue, we'd appreciate their return. The locket's weight seemed to double. Jack watched them walk away, their polished shoes incongruous on the rough dock planks. Harold whistled softly. Jackie boy, I think your life just got a lot more complicated. Looking out at his battered boat, lines of rain still falling beyond the harbour, Jack could only nod. The simple act of saving a life had dropped him into waters deeper than any he'd ever fished. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he heard his father's voice again. Sometimes the biggest catches come with the strongest fights. The business card sat on Jack's galley table, its gold lettering catching the dim light. He'd been staring at it for an hour, turning Maxwell's words over in his mind, while the locket weighed heavy in his pocket. The card's reverse side held a handwritten note. Sophia Chen, Director of Sustainable Operations. Below that, a phone number different from the one Maxwell had pointed out. County General was only 20 minutes away. He should go, return the locket, check on her condition, let that be the end of it. but something about the whole situation felt off. Professional inspection or not, what had she been doing out there alone in the storm? His phone buzzed. Harold. "Jackie, you watching the news? Chen Global just announced a major maritime sustainability initiative for our coast. They're talking about buying up more fishing rights, but with some kind of community partnership angle." Jack's eyes drifted to his father's photograph. "Timing seems convenient. Word is, they've been planning this for months, trying to smooth over tensions with local operations." Harold paused. "Think that's why she was out there?" Before Jack could answer, another call beeped through. The hospital's number. His heart jumped as he switched lines. "Mr. O'Connor?" A woman's voice, soft but clear. "This is Sophia Chen. I believe you have something of mine." Her voice carried no trace of the trauma she'd endured, just a slight hoarseness that made it more compelling. "The locket. Yes, I found it on the dock." "Not the locket." She coughed slightly. "Though I'd appreciate that too. I meant my life. I understand I have you to thank for that." Jack closed his eyes, remembering her pale face, the desperate compressions. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have. Certainly not in those conditions." A pause. "I'd like to thank you properly when they release me. Perhaps we could discuss your thoughts on sustainable fishing practices as well." The corporate speak caught him off guard. "I'm just a fisherman." "Ms. Chen, not much for business talk. Please call me Sophia, and you're more than just anything, Mr. O'Connor. You're exactly the kind of person I've been hoping to meet." Something shifted in her voice, a dropping of pretense. "The doctors say I can leave tomorrow. Have dinner with me? I promise to explain everything." Jack studied the business card again, thinking of the nets he'd sacrificed, the catch, lost to, the storm. One dinner couldn't hurt. "On one condition," he said. "We eat at Mary's Diner, best seafood in town, caught by the local fleet." Her laugh surprised him, warm, genuine, without corporate polish. "Deal, though I suspect this is a test." "Everything around here is a test, Ms. Chen. Surviving is just a matter of knowing which answers matter most." "Sophia," she corrected gently. "And speaking of tests, that locket you found? The inscription might interest you. It's about second chances." Jack's hand tightened around the phone. He looked at his boat's name painted on the hull, visible through the galley window. "Seems to be a lot of those going around lately. Life has a way of bringing the right people together at the right time." Her voice softened further. "Even if it takes a storm to do it." After hanging up, Jack finally opened the locket. Inside, behind a small photograph of a younger Sophia with an older Chinese man, was a folded scrap of paper. He carefully smoothed it out, revealing more Chinese characters, and below them, an English translation. "The surface of the sea hides its depths, just as the heart hides its truths. But in the storm, all is revealed." Jack looked at the business card again, then at his father's photograph. Two worlds, separated by more than just wealth or background. Yet something about Sophia's voice, her laugh, it had sounded like truth. Or at least the beginning of one. The locket clicked shut in his hand, its gentle sound like a key turning in a lock. Tomorrow would bring its own revelations. For now, he had a dinner to prepare for, and a lifetime of assumptions to reconsider. Mary's Diner hadn't changed its decor since the 1970s, but that was part of its charm. Jack arrived early, sliding into his usual booth beneath a faded photograph of the harbour from better days. The contract papers Sophia had handed him lay unopened. On the worn Formica tabletop, their crisp edges at odds with the diner's comfortable shabbiness. "Coffee, hun?" Mary herself appeared, coffee pot in hand. Her eyes flickered to the papers, then to Jack's unusually pressed shirt. "Heard you pulled someone important out of the drink yesterday." "Just someone who needed help." Jack pushed his cup forward. "Like anyone else would have done." Mary snorted. "Sure, that's why there's a fancy car out front and two suits trying real hard to look invisible at the counter." She poured the coffee with practiced precision. "Just remember who your friends are, Jackie." The bell above the door chimed. Sophia entered, and the diner's comfortable atmosphere shifted. She'd traded the hospital gown for a simple blue dress that probably cost more than Jack's monthly fuel bills, but she moved like someone used to working on the water, balanced, aware of her surroundings. The locket he'd returned that morning gleamed at her throat. Mr. O'Connor. Her smile was warm as she slid into the booth. "I hope I'm not late." "Jack," he corrected. "And no, I was early." He gestured to the contract. "Though it seems you were." Earlier, Sophia had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I had it delivered because I wanted you to have time to look it over before we talked." "Did you read it?" "Not yet." Jack sipped his coffee. "Thought I'd rather hear it from you first. Why you were really out there in the storm. What this is all about." Mary appeared with a second coffee cup, giving Sophia an appraising look. "Ready to order?" "I'll have what he's having," Sophia said, not looking at the menu. Mary's eyebrows rose slightly as she walked away. "The local flounder special," Jack said. "Bold choice. I trust your judgment." Sophia wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. "Just like I'm hoping you'll trust mine. That contract isn't what you think. You mean it's not Chen Global buying up more local fishing rights? It's us giving them back." She leaned forward. "The sustainability initiative isn't just corporate greenwashing, Jack. It's a complete restructuring of how we operate. Partnership with local fishermen, profit sharing, modernization that preserves traditional methods instead of replacing them." Jack's fingers brushed the contract's edge. "And you need me because you're respected here. Because you understand both the old ways and the need for change." She touched her locket unconsciously. "Because you're the kind of person who risks everything to save a stranger. Even if that stranger was there specifically to meet me?" Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "You figured it out. Small harbors have long memories. Your father's name was familiar, not just from Chen Global. He used to fish these waters, didn't he, before he built his empire, 30 years ago?" Sophia nodded. "He started with one boat, just like you, just like your father." She pulled out an old photograph from her purse, creased and worn. It showed two young men on a fishing boat, grinning at the camera. Jack recognized his father immediately, and the man beside him had Sophia's eyes. "They were friends," Jack said, softly, pieces clicking into place. "More than that, partners, until the storm that claimed your mother's life. My father offered to help yours modernize, expand, but Dad believed in doing things the old way, even if it meant struggling." Sophia touched the photograph gently. "When I took over sustainable operations, I started reading the old files, found this picture, started asking questions. Father finally told me everything, including how much he regretted letting their friendship fade. So you came to offer." "What? A second chance?" "A bridge between two worlds." She pushed the contract closer. "Read it, really read it. This isn't about buying out tradition, Jack. It's about preserving it, making it viable again, with you helping lead the way." The leather-bound ledger was a time capsule of Port Haven's fishing history. Jack's father had kept meticulous records, catches, weather patterns, crew shares, everything that made the industry tick. Running his finger down the yellowed pages, Jack could trace the slow decline. Bigger corporations moving in, smaller operations folding, prices dropping while costs soared. "Your father was quite the accountant," Sophia said, leaning close to study the neat columns. They sat in Jack's small kitchen, early morning light streaming through salt-sprayed windows. 3 days had passed since their dinner at Mary's, and the harbour was buzzing with rumours about Chen Global's proposal. "He believed in knowing exactly where you stand." Jack turned to the final entries, made just before his father's death. "Said you can't navigate forward if you don't know your true position." Sophia touched one of the entries. "These patterns here, they match our corporate data. Your father was tracking the same decline we were, just from a different perspective." The morning coffee percolated, filling the kitchen with its familiar aroma. Outside, boats were heading out for the day's catch. Jack had been planet-bound since the rescue. dealing with insurance forms for his lost nets and fielding endless questions from fellow fishermen. "Harold's organizing a meeting," he said, closing the ledger. "Tomorrow night at the Union Hall. They want to hear about the proposal directly from you. Are you ready for that? Once it goes public, everything changes." Jack stood, poured 2 cups of coffee. "Question is, changes for better or worse?" Sophia accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. "Come with me, I want to show you something." They drove in her rental car along the coast, past weather-beaten houses and empty storefronts. Sophia handled the vehicle with the same confidence she'd shown in the diner. No hesitation, no wasted movement. She pulled into a small cove north of town, one that had once been thick with fishing boats. "What do you see?" she asked, leading him to the water's edge. "Ghost Harbor," Jack said. "Used to be 30 boats worked from here. Now it's just storage for pleasure craft." Look closer. At the water quality, the marine growth on the pilings. The fish populations here have rebounded since the commercial operations left. Now imagine this harbor active again, but with sustainable practices, limited catches, targeted species, no bottom trawling. She pulled out her tablet, showed him simulation models. "Your father's ledger proves it. The old ways worked because they were naturally limiting. We just need to apply that wisdom with modern efficiency." Jack watched a school of fish dart beneath the clear water. "And Chen Global makes money how?" "By selling authenticity. Wild-caught fish, traditionally harvested, with guaranteed provenance. The market for that is growing exponentially." She turned to face him. "But it only works with local knowledge. Your knowledge." The sun caught her hair, the same golden color as her locket. Jack thought about the ledger's final pages, his father's careful notations marking the end of an era. "But maybe also the beginning of something new. The others won't trust it easily," he said. "Too many promises broken over the years. Then we earn that trust, starting tomorrow night." Sophia stepped closer, her voice softening. "I know what they see when they look at me, corporate outsider, someone born into privilege. But my father taught me the same respect for the sea that yours taught you. Different lessons, same principles." A fishing boat rounded the headland, heading out late. Jack recognized Harold's lucky penny by the way it rode the swells. His old friend would be watching this cove, noting who Jack was with, what it might mean. "Your father and mine lost their chance at partnership," Sophia said quietly, "at friendship. Maybe we can do better." The ledger's weight seemed to press against Jack's thoughts. All those careful records of what was lost, what changed, what endured. His father's voice echoed in memory. "The sea provides, son, but you have to be wise enough to take what it offers." Looking at Sophia, at the passion in her eyes when she spoke of sustainability and tradition, Jack wondered if the sea had provided again, not just a rescue, but a future. The question was, would Port Haven be wise enough to take what was being offered? The architectural plans spread across the Union Hall's scarred table like a vision of the future imposed on the present. Detailed renderings showed a renovated harbor that somehow managed to look both modern and traditional. Steel and glass married to weathered wood and time-worn stone. Sophia stood before the gathered fishermen, her professional demeanor only slightly betrayed by the way she kept touching her locket for reassurance. The existing dock structures would be reinforced, not replaced, she explained, pointing to the blue-lined sections. "We preserve the character while improving functionality. Each independent operator maintains their current slip with upgraded facilities for processing and cold storage." "And what's that glass monster supposed to be?" Frank Dawson's voice carried from the back, heavy with skepticism. The 68-year-old fisherman had worked these waters longer than Jack had been alive. "The Maritime Heritage Center." Sophia met his challenge calmly. "A working museum that showcases traditional fishing methods, offers education programs, and provides direct-to-consumer sales opportunities for local catch. Your history, your stories, preserved and shared. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jack studied the faces he'd known all his life. Weather-beaten, cautious, proud, they'd weathered storms and corporate takeovers, regulations and dwindling stocks. Hope was a dangerous commodity in a fishing town. The processing facility, Harold spoke up, tapping the plans. You're saying we'd all have access? Guaranteed by contract. Modern flash freezing equipment, packaging facilities, direct distribution channels. Sophia highlighted another section, plus a dedicated maintenance yard for traditional wooden boats. We want to keep the heritage fleet operational, not turn it into decorative tourist props. Pretty words, Frank countered, but we've heard promises before. Remember Blue Ocean's pitch 5 years ago? They were all sunshine and roses too, until they started squeezing the little guys out. Jack stepped forward, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. This is different, Frank. I've read every line of the contracts. Chen Global is offering real partnership, not a buyout. Because of her? Someone called out. Because you pulled her out of the drink. Now we're supposed to trust her whole operation. No, Jack said firmly. Because I've studied my father's ledgers. Because I've seen the same patterns he saw. What works, what doesn't, what we're losing. This plan, he gestured at the blueprints, this gives us a fighting chance to keep our way of life while actually making a living from it. Sophia touched his arm gently, then addressed the crowd. I know trust is earned, not given. That's why we're proposing a phased approach. A test program with 5 boats to start. Prove the model works before anyone else has to commit. The room buzzed with conversation. Harold stood up. And who'd be first? Who'd take that risk? I will. Jack's voice cut through the noise. The second chance will be first. Seems fitting. More murmurs, but different now. Thoughtful rather than hostile. Frank made his way forward, squinting at the plans through thick glasses. Your daddy was the best fisherman I ever knew, Jackie, he said slowly. Best businessman, too, in his own way. He understood value, not just profit. He looked up at Sophia. That heritage center. Would there be space to tell his story? To show the young ones what it really means to live by the tide? We'd want you to help design it, Mr. Dawson. Sophia's voice carried genuine respect. You and everyone here. This isn't about Chen Global telling Port Haven's story. It's about giving you the tools to tell it yourselves. The old fisherman straightened, joints creaking. Might be willing to sign on then, after Jackie proves it works. He jabbed a gnarled finger at the plans. But that glass monstrosity needs more wood trim. Can't have it looking too fancy. Laughter broke the tension. Soon the crowd was clustered around the table, pointing out details, suggesting changes, arguing about aesthetics. Sophia handled each comment diplomatically, noting corrections on her tablet. Jack watched her work the room, saw how she listened more than she spoke. The architectural plans seemed to come alive under the fisherman's weathered hands, transforming from corporate blueprint to community vision. His father's voice echoed in memory. A harbor's not just wood and water, son. It's people, their hopes, their fears, their dreams. The evening sun slanted through the hall's salt-streaked windows, catching Sophia's locket as she leaned over the plans. For a moment, past and future seemed to merge in the golden light. Tradition and progress-finding. Common ground on a blueprint of possibility. The letter arrived on cheap printer paper, unsigned and unadorned. Jack found it wedged in his screen door early morning, damp with sea mist. The message was computer-printed, but its meaning was crystal clear. Back off while you can. Some traditions don't need saving. Some changes aren't welcome. Ask yourself why she was really in that water. First warning. Dawn was just breaking over the harbor as Jack reread the note. 2 weeks had passed since the Union Hall meeting. The test program was set to launch next month, with the second chance leading the way. He'd been so focused on the future, he'd forgotten that progress always cast shadows. His phone buzzed. Sophia. Morning, he answered, trying to keep his voice normal. You're up early. Turn on the news. She sounded tense. Channel 8. He flicked on the small TV he kept in the kitchen. A reporter stood on the dock near his slip, the second chance visible in the background. The headline crawled across the bottom. Corporate giant's sustainable fishing program faces allegations of environmental fraud. Independent watchdog groups claim Chen Global's previous sustainability initiatives in Asian markets led to increased illegal fishing and false reporting, the reporter said. Sources suggest the Port Haven project could be another case of blue washing, using environmental promises to hide conventional corporate expansion. Jack's free hand crumpled the anonymous letter. Sophia, it's not true. Her voice shook slightly. Those allegations were investigated and dismissed years ago. Someone's deliberately reviving them. Blue Ocean. They both knew Chen Global's primary competitor had been suspiciously quiet lately. Maybe. Or local interests who prefer the status quo. Jack, there's more. Someone broke into our Portland office last night. The only things taken were the Port Haven project files. The letter seemed to burn in his hand. I got a warning too, left at my door. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Sophia spoke softly. We knew there would be resistance. I just didn't expect. Jack, maybe we should delay the launch. I don't want you taking risks. No. The word came out sharper than he intended. That's exactly what they want. Create enough doubt, enough fear, and people retreat to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is slowly dying. Through his window, he could see Harold's boat heading out, cutting through waters turned golden by the rising sun. The reporter and camera crew were packing up, their brief invasion of the harbor's morning routine already ending. My father used to say that when the tide starts turning, that's when you see what's really been hidden in the depths, Jack continued. We're changing things here, Sophia, real change. Of course it's stirring up the bottom. The board meets next. A week. They'll want answers about the security breach, about these allegations. She paused. About us. The last word hung between them, acknowledging something neither had yet voiced. Their daily meetings had started stretching into evening walks along the shore. Coffee at Mary's had become dinner at small restaurants up the coast. The whole town was talking, but not just about the business partnership. Let them ask. Jack straightened. Decision made. I'll testify if needed. Bring the ledgers. Show them the real history. Prove this isn't about corporate expansion. It's about survival. For all of us. Jack. Her voice softened further. I never meant to drag you into a corporate war. He looked at the letter again, thinking of stormy waters and split-second choices. Pretty sure I dragged myself in when I jumped into that storm after you. Speaking of which, you never did tell me exactly why you were out there that day. A long pause. No, I didn't. Another pause. Have dinner with me tonight. There's something you need to know. About the accident. About why I really came to Port Haven. The harbour was fully awake now, boats moving through the morning mist like ghosts of all the years that had come before. Change was coming, one way or another. The only question was who would control its direction. Dinner, he agreed. But this time, I'm cooking. 7 o'clock my place. Bring your appetite and your truth. Both, she promised. And Jack, be careful today. Something tells me that letter won't be the last warning. The environmental impact report was unexpectedly beautiful, in a technical sort of way. Full-color charts tracked fish populations across decades, while detailed maps showed spawning grounds and migration patterns. Jack spread the documents across his galley table, Sophia beside him, both of them poring over data that could make or break the project. These numbers support everything your father recorded, Sophia said, comparing the report to his dad's ledger. The traditional fishing grounds he favored, they're showing the healthiest population recovery rates in the region, because he understood natural cycles. Jack traced a migration route with his finger. Never took more than the waters could replenish. The corporate trawlers. He stopped, remembering who he was talking to. Go ahead, Sophia smiled. Say it. The corporate trawlers don't think that way. Why do you think I pushed so hard for this? Study? Before Jack could respond, a sharp knock rattled his door. Harold entered without waiting, his face tight with concern. "You two need to see this." He slapped a tablet down on top of the reports. A competing study was making rounds online, claiming Chen Global's data was manipulated. The author? Dr. James Morrison, Blue Ocean's chief environmental scientist. "It's getting ugly out there," Harold said. "Morrison's claiming your whole sustainable fishing model is based on flawed methodology. Says it'll actually increase pressure on declining species." Sophia's hands clenched. "Morrison lost his credibility years ago. He takes funding from anyone. Who wants to block environmental initiatives?" "Doesn't matter," Jack said quietly. "People will believe what fits their fears. We need something concrete, something local." He pulled out the spawning ground maps, an idea forming. "These testing sites, we can verify them ourselves, right? Take samples, shoot underwater footage?" Sophia nodded slowly. "We have the equipment on our research vessel, but it would take weeks. Not if we get the whole harbor involved." Jack turned to Harold. "How many boats would trust us enough to help? After that threat letter? Not many." Harold studied the maps. "But a few. Frank might come around if you show him these numbers. He's been tracking spawning grounds his whole life." Sophia touched Jack's arm. "The board meeting is in 3 days. We'd need conclusive evidence before then. Then we better get started." Jack grabbed his keys. "Harold, call Frank. Sophia, get your research team ready. We're going to do our own environmental study, one that even Morrison can't ignore." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Local boats spread across testing sites, dropping sensors and cameras. Frank's knowledge proved invaluable, confirming spawning locations that matched perfectly with the report's projections. Even the skeptics had to admit the data was compelling, but it was the underwater footage that proved most powerful. Crystal clear. Videos showed healthy fish populations in traditionally fished areas, contrasted with the barren seafloor where trawlers operated. Sophia's team worked through the night compiling evidence, building an irrefutable case for their sustainable approach. "Your father would be proud," Sophia said softly. They stood on the deck of the Second Chance, watching the sunrise after their final sampling run. "You've united the harbor in a way I never could." Jack thought about the report's implications. Not just for the project, but for the future of fishing itself. Maybe that's what this was always about. Not just preserving tradition, but proving it was right all along. "Jack," Sophia hesitated, "about what I need to tell you. Why I was out in that storm." His radio crackled before she could continue. Harold's voice urgent. "Jackie, get back to dock now. Morrison himself just showed up with a film crew. He's challenging us to defend our data. Live interview in 1 hour." Jack looked at Sophia, saw his own determination mirrored in her eyes. "Ready to prove your case to the world." She touched her locket, then squared her shoulders. "Born ready. Let's show them what tradition and science can do together." The Second Chance turned toward harbor, cutting through waters that held both their past and their future. The morning sun caught their wake, turning it to gold. The Old Town Charter lay open in the City Hall archives, its yellowed pages documenting Port Haven's founding principles. Jack had never seen it before, but now he traced the faded ink with reverent fingers, Sophia leaning close beside him. "There," she pointed to a passage, "look at the original harbor provisions." The archaic language was clear enough. "These waters shall forever remain free fishing grounds, governed by those who work them, for the benefit of all who dwell upon these shores." Below, careful signatures preserved the names of Port Havens. "Our founding families, among them O'Connor and Chen. Our families helped write this," Jack said softly. "They were part of the original Fishing Council, before corporations, before industrial fishing." Sophia's voice held wonder. "They understood something we're just rediscovering." The Charter's revelation had to wait, though. Outside City Hall, Morrison and his film crew were setting up for the confrontation. News vans had arrived from Portland, drawn by the promise of controversy. The whole town seemed to be gathering. Ready? Sophia squared her shoulders, clutching a folder of their evidence. Almost. Jack pulled out his phone, dialed quickly. Frank, bring everyone. And that logbook you mentioned? We need it. Morrison cut an impressive figure before the cameras, distinguished, authoritative, every inch the concerned scientist. His opening statement was a masterpiece of subtle accusation. These waters have sustained generations of fishermen, he intoned. Now Chen Global proposes radical changes based on questionable data and unproven methods. We must ask ourselves, who really benefits? Jack stepped forward, the charter's words burning in his memory. Let's talk about benefits, Dr. Morrison, and history. He nodded to Frank, who emerged from the crowd carrying a battered leather logbook. This is the harbour master's record from 1962, Jack continued, the year before industrial trawling began here. Compare those fish counts to today's numbers. He laid out their evidence, methodically destroying Morrison's arguments with hard data and local knowledge. Sophia added satellite imagery showing the recovery in traditionally fished zones. Our proposal isn't radical, Dr. Morrison. It's a return to proven methods, enhanced by modern technology. Pretty pictures and local folklore, Morrison scoffed. But the science supports tradition. Frank's voice carried across the crowd. I've fished these waters 50 years, watched the big operations destroy grounds that had been productive for generations. Now Chen Global wants to admit we were right all along, and you're fighting it. Why? Morrison's confidence wavered. The economic realities are changing. Sophia stepped forward. Blue Ocean's been buying up fishing rights all along the coast, trying to establish a monopoly. That's why you're really here, isn't it? Not to protect the environment, but to protect their investment. A murmur ran through the crowd. Jack pulled out the town charter, held it up. This document established Port Haven's waters as community-regulated fishing grounds. That authority was never legally surrendered, which means Blue Ocean's rights purchases might not be valid at all. Morrison's face reddened. I'm suggesting you're trying to block our project because it threatens Blue Ocean's expansion plans. Jack turned to the cameras, while also proving that traditional fishing methods, properly supported, are more sustainable than industrial trawling. The crowd's mood was shifting. Fishermen pushed forward, voices rising with questions about Blue Ocean's purchases, demands to see the evidence. Morrison retreated to his crew, already reaching for his phone. Sophia touched Jack's arm. You knew about the charter all along, didn't you? That's why you were so confident about the board meeting. Suspected. Needed to confirm it. He watched Morrison's hasty departure. But I still don't know why you were out in that storm. Think it's finally time you told me? She fingered her locket, looking at the charter in his hands. Yes, because it's all connected. The accident. Blue Ocean, everything. Her eyes met his, filled with both trust and trepidation. But not here. Tonight, after the Harbour Council meeting. I'll tell you everything. The crowd was dispersing, but the energy remained electric. Change was coming to Port Haven, but not the kind Blue Ocean had planned. Jack carefully returned the charter to its protective folder, this piece of history that had just helped secure their future. Frank clapped him on the shoulder. Your father would have loved this, Jackie. Using the old laws to protect the old ways, while building something new, Sophia added softly. The morning sun broke through Port Haven's perpetual fog, catching the gold of Sophia's locket. Tonight would bring its own revelations. But for now, tradition and progress had found common ground in faded ink and enduring principles. The sheared steering cable lay on Jack's workbench like a metal snake, its clean-cut surface catching the workshop's fluorescent light. Harold examined it with practiced eyes, his expression grim. No way this was wear and tear, he said, pointing to the cut marks. Someone got aboard the Second Chance last night. Could have killed you if it had snapped at sea." Jack's hands clenched. He'd discovered the sabotage during his morning equipment check, the same careful routine that had saved his life countless times before. The Harbour Council meeting was in 3 hours, and Sophia still wasn't answering her phone. "Security cameras?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The harbour's surveillance system had mysteriously malfunctioned overnight. Dead, along with the ones at Chen Global's office. Harold set the cable down carefully. "Jackie, this isn't just business anymore. Someone's playing for keeps." A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the workshop's grimy windows, they saw Sophia's corporate security team searching her. Their faces tense. She stood to the side, pale but composed, Maxwell hovering nearby. "I need to—" Jack started. "Go," Harold nodded. "I'll get Frank and the others. After that cable, they need to know what we're really up against." Sophia met Jack halfway to her car. "We need to talk. Now." She led him to a quiet corner of the dock, her usual confidence rattled. "They found this in my car." She handed him a USB drive. "Security footage from the night of the accident. The night you rescued me. The storm." The drive felt heavy in his hand. "I thought all the cameras were down that day." "They were. This is from a different source." She touched her locket, a nervous gesture he'd come to recognize. "Jack, Maxwell appeared beside them, smooth as silk. "Ms. Chen, the board is requesting an emergency video conference. They're concerned about recent developments." "The board can wait." Steel entered her voice. "Jack needs to see this footage. He deserves to know." "What I deserve," Maxwell cut in softly, "is for you to honor our agreement. Or have you forgotten what's really at stake?" Something passed between them, unspoken but heavy with history. Sophia's hand dropped from her locket, her expression closing off. "I'm sorry, Jack, I have to take this call." "Sophia, wait." But she was already walking away, Maxwell at her elbow like a well-dressed shadow. The USB drive burned in Jack's pocket as he watched them go. His phone buzzed. "Frank." "Jackie, you better get to the Union Hall. Blue Ocean's lawyers just showed up with some kind of injunction. They're trying to stop tonight's council meeting." The morning dissolved into legal arguments and hastily called conferences. Jack barely had time to secure the USB drive in his safe before being pulled into discussions about jurisdiction and historical precedents. The cut steering cable sat forgotten on his workbench, its message of escalating danger pushed aside by immediate crises. By late afternoon, dark clouds were gathering, both metaphorically and literally. The injunction had been temporarily blocked, but Blue Ocean's lawyers promised appeals. The Harbour Council meeting would proceed, but under the shadow of corporate legal threats. Jack finally had a moment to breathe, standing on his deck as the first raindrops fell. The same weather pattern as the day of the rescue was forming. He pulled out his phone, tried Sophia's number again. A text replied immediately. "Don't trust anyone, not even me. Meeting cancelled. Stay away from the harbour tonight." Before he could respond, Harold's voice carried across the dock. "Jackie, Sophia's car, it just went off the road up on Harbour Point." The world tilted. Jack was running before the words fully registered, Harold's shouts following him. "Witnesses saw someone force her off the road. Maxwell's missing." The cut steering cable flashed in his mind, its clean edges promising more violence to come. But underneath the fear, something else nagged at him. The USB drive, the accident, Maxwell's subtle threats. Sophia's last text echoed, "Don't trust anyone, not even me." Thunder cracked overhead as Jack reached his truck. The same storm pattern, the same road, even the same time of day. This wasn't history repeating itself. This was something else, something planned. The Second Chance had lived up to its name once before. Now he just had to make sure it could do it again. The old brass compass had been his father's, its face scratched but true, its needle unwavering even in storm conditions. Jack held it steady as he navigated the treacherous curves of Harbour Point Road, rain hammering his windshield. Sophia's. Crashed car sat empty, driver's door open, rain soaking the airbag, but there was something wrong with the scene. No skid marks, despite the wet road. No signs of another vehicle, just like the night of the original accident. His phone rang. Harold. Jackie got into the harbour security office, found something you need to see. That footage from the storm, it wasn't an accident. She was running. Jack finished, spotting something in the mud beside Sophia's car. Her locket lay half-buried, chain broken just like before. She staged both accidents, but why? Maxwell's been working for Blue Ocean the whole time. Deep cover. Found the proof in static cut through Harold's voice. Files show they've been planning this for months. Using Sophia to... The call died. Jack pocketed the locket and pulled. Out the USB drive he'd grabbed from his safe. His laptop booted slowly, rain drumming on the truck's roof as he watched the security footage. The video showed Sophia arguing with Maxwell the night of the storm. She had discovered his double agent. Status: threatened to expose Blue Ocean's illegal operations. The next clip showed her running, Maxwell in pursuit. She'd chosen the storm as cover, knowing the corporate boats wouldn't follow, but she hadn't counted on a local fisherman being stubborn enough to stay out in those conditions. The compass lay on his dashboard, pointing steadily northeast, toward the old lighthouse. The same direction he'd seen fresh tire tracks heading. His radio crackled. Frank's voice. Jackie found something in those old logbooks. The lighthouse keeper's records from the 60s. There's a sea cave below the point. Used to be a smuggler's route. High tide covers the entrance, but low tide... When's the next low tide? 20 minutes. But that storm's getting worse, even. If she's there, she'll be there. Jack was already turning toward the lighthouse access road. Maxwell doesn't know about the cave. She's leading him in circles while the tide drops. He killed his headlights as he approached the lighthouse. Rain reducing visibility to mere feet. A black SUV sat hidden among the trees. Maxwell's, judging by the government plates. The compass pointed toward an overgrown trail leading down the cliffs. Jack moved carefully, years of working on wet decks serving him well on the slick rocks. Voices, carried up from below, barely audible over the storm. "It's over, Sophia," Maxwell's voice. "Blue Ocean knows about the charter gambit. They're prepared to fight it in court for years. By then, there won't be any independent fishermen left to save." "You really think I came back just for the fishing rights?" Sophia's tone was pure steel. "The drive you're so desperate to find, it has everything. Every illegal operation Blue Ocean's been running. Every bribe, every covered-up environmental violation. Dad suspected for years, but he needed proof. Your father's a fool who never understood how this industry really works. Now where's the drive?" Jack edged closer, using the storm for cover. They stood at the cave's entrance, Maxwell holding a gun, Sophia backed against the rocks. The tide was still too high to reach the cave's inner chamber. "You want to know how the industry really works?" Sophia's voice carried over the waves. "Ask him." She looked directly at Jack's position. Maxwell started to turn, but Jack was already moving. The compass flew from his hand, striking Maxwell's arm just as Sophia dove for his legs. The gun went spinning, swallowed by the surf. The fight was brief and brutal. Maxwell might have had training, but Jack had spent his life wrestling nets in heavy seas. When it was over, Maxwell lay unconscious, and Sophia was clutching her side, breathing hard. "You knew I'd figure it out," Jack said, retrieving his compass from the churning water. "Hoped," she managed a smile. "Needed someone who'd understand why this matters, why it's worth fighting for." She pulled a second USB drive from her boot. "The one in your safe is a dummy. This is everything. Blue Ocean's whole operation. And the first accident? The rescue? Had to make them think they'd won? That they'd scared me off?" She touched her side, where the locket usually hung. "Didn't count on finding something worth staying for." The compass needle swung with the storm winds, but its course was still true. Like the harbor's future, like the truth, sometimes hidden, but always there for those who knew how to read the signs. Lightning flashed as they helped each other up the cliff trail, leaving Maxwell for the authorities Harold had already called. The storm was breaking, and with it, the hold that fear and secrecy had kept on Port Haven's waters. The old navigation map covered most of Mary's largest table, its creased surface showing decades of penciled notes and careful annotations. 3 generations of Port Haven fishermen had marked their knowledge on this single chart. Spawning grounds, safe harbors, dangerous shoals. Now it served a new purpose as the community plotted its future. Blue Ocean's operations were concentrated here. Sophia pointed to the northern waters, her recovered locket glinting in the diner's warm light. They've been using these deeper channels to hide their illegal trawling from satellite monitoring. Right. Through the old spawning grounds, Frank growled. The morning crowd of fishermen murmured in angry agreement. 2 days had passed since Maxwell's arrest, and the evidence on Sophia's drive had triggered investigations up and down the coast. Jack studied the map's familiar contours, seeing them with new eyes. But look at what they avoided. His finger traced the traditional fishing areas, everything inside the charter's original boundaries, all the grounds our families protected. They're still viable. Harold spread out the latest marine survey. Population counts are actually improving in those zones. Traditional methods plus modern conservation. It's working exactly like you said it would. The bell above Mary's door chimed. Chen Global's board chairman entered, looking somewhat out of place in his expensive suit. But there was something familiar about the way he carried himself, an echo of Sophia's confidence. Dad. Sophia stood, tension visible in her shoulders. They hadn't spoken since the truth about Maxwell came out. James Chen surveyed the gathered fishermen, then the map-covered table. Something softened in his expression. "You found your grandfather's old chart," he said to Sophia. "He taught me to navigate by these same marks, back when I was just a deckhand." He moved closer, touched a faded notation. "This was your mother's handwriting. She added the seasonal patterns, helped us understand how the grounds renewed themselves." He looked at his daughter. "She always said the sea would show us the right path if we were wise enough to follow it." Sophia's hand went to her locket, her mother's locket, Jack realized. The chairman turned to address the room. "Chen Global's board has reviewed the evidence about Blue Ocean's activities. We're prepared to fully support Port Haven's traditional fishing rights and to implement Sophia's sustainability program exactly as proposed." He paused, smiled slightly, though perhaps with a new local director in charge. The fishermen stirred, but Frank spoke first. "And who'd that be?" "Joint leadership," Sophia said quickly. "If Jack agrees, traditional knowledge and modern methods working together, the way it always should have been." Jack felt the weight of every eye in the diner. He looked at the map, thought of his father's ledgers, of everything that had led to this moment. "On one condition," he said finally, "we keep the independent. Boats independent, partnership, not ownership." "Already drawn up in the new contracts," the chairman nodded, "along with provisions for expanding the heritage fleet and training programs." He turned to his daughter. "Your mother would be proud. Of both of us, I hope." Mary appeared with coffee for everyone, her timing impeccable as always. "About time you all figured it out," she said, refilling cups. "Now who's hungry? I've got fresh catch coming up, sustainably harvested, of course." Laughter broke the last of the tension. Soon the map was dotted with coffee cups as fishermen gathered around, sharing knowledge, suggesting improvements to the program. Sophia slipped her hand into Jack's as they watched the scene. "Think we can make it work?" she asked softly. Jack thought of the compass that had guided him to her, the charter that had protected their waters, the ledgers that had preserved their history, all different ways of navigating toward the same truth. "Look at that map," he said. "Every mark on it is someone's lesson learned, someone's wisdom passed down. We're not creating something new, we're just remembering what we always knew, together." Outside Mary's windows, the morning sun painted the harbor in shades of promise. Boats bobbed at their moorings, weathered and proud, ready for whatever tide would come. The future was as vast and challenging as the sea itself, but now they had a proper chart to navigate by, and two good captains to lead the way. The new boat registration certificate gleamed with official seals and fresh ink, but it was the vessel name that caught everyone's eye. Second Chance Partnership. The document represented more than just Jack's boat. It was the template for Port Haven's future, a legal framework that protected both progress and tradition. First of its kind, the Coast Guard inspector said, adding his final stamp. Joint registration between independent operator and corporate entity with heritage fleet status had to create whole new forms for this one. Jack shared a smile with Sophia as they stood on the newly renovated dock. The harbour was alive with activity, boats being fitted with modern tracking systems, crews training on sustainable gear, the Heritage Centre rising from its foundations. Speaking of forms, Sophia said, pulling out another document, Dad finished the trust arrangement, the Chen family's original fishing rights, restored to local control, legally binding and irreversible. Frank appeared with a bottle of champagne. Harold trailing behind with plastic cups. Enough paperwork. Time to celebrate the first official heritage vessel of the new fleet. The Second Chance looked different now, restored to her original lines, but upgraded where it counted. Modern equipment blended seamlessly with traditional construction, just as the new partnership balanced corporate resources with local wisdom. Remember what this place looked like 2 months ago? Harold handed out cups. Empty slips, failing boats, everyone just hanging on. Jack did remember. The contrast was striking. Where there had been resignation, now there was purpose. The fishing crews moved with new confidence, proud of their role in something larger than themselves. Got the first harvest numbers from the trial runs, Sophia said, accepting a cup. Traditional. Methods plus targeted tracking. We're seeing better yields than industrial trawling, with minimal environmental impact. And better prices, Frank added. Restaurants in Portland are fighting over our catch. Turns out people will pay extra for fish with a story, harvested the right way. The champagne made its rounds as more people gathered. Mary appeared with a tray of her famous crab cakes. On the house for this occasion. The harbour's transformation had brought new customers to her diner, but she kept the old specials board and weathered tables. Some traditions didn't need changing. Jack found himself studying the registration certificate again. His father's name was still there, listed as the original owner, with Jack and Sophia now sharing operational rights. A bridge between past and future, just like everything else they'd built. Having second thoughts, Sophia touched his arm gently. The opposite. He gestured at the busy harbour, thinking about what Dad would say. All this change, but somehow it feels more like the old days than ever. That's because we're not just preserving boats or fishing rights, she said. We're preserving the heart of it, the knowledge, the respect for the sea, the sense of community. As if to prove her point, a group of young fishermen passed by, heading for the new training centre. They carried tablets and traditional navigation tools, learning to use both. The next generation, finding their own balance between old and new. Celebration continued into evening, the harbour lights reflecting off calm waters. Stories flowed as freely as Mary's coffee, old grievances giving way to new possibilities. Even the corporate representatives from Chen Global had relaxed, their suits abandoned for more practical portwear. Got something for you, Harold said, pulling Jack aside. He handed over a small package wrapped in oilcloth. Found it in that crate of old navigation gear. Inside was a brass nameplate, tarnished but still legible. Second Chance, O'Connor. And Chen Est, 1962. The date matched the original partnership between their fathers. Must have been made back then, Harold said, when they were still planning to work together, before the storm that changed everything. Sophia joined them, reading the plate over Jack's shoulder. Her hand found his, squeezing gently. Some chances take longer than others, she said softly. The registration certificate had already been filed, the partnership officially recorded. But as Jack held that brass plate from the past, he realized some things needed to be marked in more personal ways. "Think it's time this found its way home," he said, heading for his boat. The nameplate fit perfectly below the helm, beside his father's photograph. 2 families, 2 generations, 2 ways of seeing the future, all finally finding their way back to the same harbor. The registration might make it legal, but this made it real. The partnership agreement's final page bore 2 sets of signatures, one from each generation. Above, James Chen and Jack's father's decades-old signatures on the original charter documents. Below, Jack and Sophia's fresh ink marking the new era. The parallel signatures seemed to bridge time itself, healing old wounds and charting new courses. "That's the last one," Sophia said, setting down her pen. The Harbour Council chamber buzzed with quiet conversation as other partnerships were finalized. In 6 months, they'd transformed Port Haven from a dying fishing town into a model of sustainable industry. "Almost the last one," Jack corrected, pulling a small envelope from his jacket. Inside was a different kind of agreement, a deed to the cottage overlooking the harbour. "Thought you might want a more permanent place to stay. The commute from Portland must be getting old." Sophia's eyes widened as she read the address. "The lighthouse keeper's cottage, but that's been empty for years. Frank's grandson does good restoration work. We've been fixing it up between fishing runs." Jack tried to sound casual, though his heart raced. "It's got a clear view of the whole harbour, perfect for the local director of operations." "Perfect. And for a home," she said softly, her hand finding his. The morning sun through the chamber's windows caught her locket, repaired now, but still carrying its history of storms weathered and secrets revealed. Outside, the harbour hummed with renewed life. The Heritage Centre was nearly complete, its traditional architecture housing state-of-the-art educational displays. Tourist boats shared dock space with working vessels, each supporting the other. Even Mary's diner had expanded, though she insisted on keeping the original counter for the regulars. Harold burst into the chamber, waving a tablet. "Numbers just came in from the first quarter. The sustainable certification program, high-end restaurants are paying triple market rate. Every independent boat in the program is showing a profit." Jack studied the figures, thinking of his father's careful ledger entries. The old wisdom combined with new methods was working better than even they had hoped. But more importantly, the fisherman's pride had returned. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were innovating, teaching, carrying their heritage forward. "There's something else," Sophia said, pulling out her own set of papers. "The Marine Science Program approved our proposal. Starting next month, every heritage vessel will take on an apprentice. College students learning traditional methods alongside modern conservation." "Your father's idea?" "Ours," she smiled. "He's learning to listen, to remember what it was like when he was just starting out." The chamber gradually emptied as captains and crews returned to their boats. The afternoon tide was calling, and Port Haven's fleet still had work to do. But now each departure felt less like an escape and more like a promise. Of return, of continuation, of balance found between progress and tradition. Jack and Sophia walked down to the docks together, the partnership agreement safely filed away. The second chance waited at her slip, freshly painted but still weathered in all the right places. Like Port Haven itself, she wore her age proudly while embracing the future. "Ready for the afternoon run?" Jack asked, helping Sophia aboard. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd made this step 100 times before, no longer the corporate director, but a true partner in their shared enterprise. "Born ready," she replied, taking her place at the helm. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the months, alternating who captained, who navigated, who handled the modernized gear. Some days they followed traditional methods entirely. Others they tested new sustainable approaches. Every voyage added another page to the harbor's ongoing story. The partnership agreement might have made it official, but the real agreement was written in quieter ways, in shared glances and easy silences, in the trust of a wheel handed over, in the gentle weight of her head on his shoulder during long watches, in the way the whole harbor had come to see them not as corporate and local, but simply as their own kind of tradition. As they motored past the breakwater, Sophia reached for his hand. The lighthouse keeper's cottage caught the sun above them, its windows now bright with promise instead of emptiness. Another kind of partnership agreement waiting to be signed. The wedding ring caught the last light of sunset as Jack slipped it onto Sophia's finger. Simple gold, like the locket she wore, but engraved with waves on the inside, a private reminder of the storm that had brought them together. They stood on the deck of the Second Chance. Their friends and family gathered around them, the harbor spread out below like a painting come to life. 1 year to the day since that desperate rescue, and Port Haven had transformed in ways none of them could have imagined. The Heritage Fleet's flags snapped in the breeze, each boat proudly displaying both traditional colors and sustainable certification. The Maritime Center hummed with activity, its classrooms full of young people learning the delicate balance between old wisdom and new techniques. "By the power vested in me," Frank said, his weathered voice carrying across the water, "and by the blessing of these witnesses and this harbor that has been our home." He paused, emotions catching up. "Well, you know the rest. Just kiss her, Jackie." Laughter and applause rolled across the deck. Sophia's father wiped away tears as he watched his daughter, no longer the corporate director, but a true daughter of the harbor, seal her future with a fisherman's son. The partnership that had begun with their father's dreams had finally come full circle. Mary had outdone herself with the reception at the diner, converting the old place into an elegant venue while somehow keeping its authentic charm. Stories flowed as freely as wine, tales of storms weathered and challenges overcome, each one a thread in Port Haven's continuing story. "Remember the look on Maxwell's face," Harold chuckled, "when the FBI showed up with those Blue Ocean files? Never seen a man turn so pale. Remember the first Heritage Fleet ceremony?" Frank's grandson added, "when the old boats sailed out alongside the modern ones, all of them working together?" Sophia leaned close to Jack as they swayed to the music, her ring warm against his shoulder. "Remember our first dinner here?" she whispered. "When you were so suspicious of the corporate invader. Remember our first kiss," he countered, "up at the lighthouse cottage after you finally told me the whole truth about the accident?" "Remember tomorrow," she said softly, "and all the tomorrows after that." The evening deepened into night, stars appearing above the harbor lights. One by one, the wedding guests departed, heading home to rest before the morning tide. The fishing didn't stop for celebrations. The sea kept its own schedule. Jack and Sophia stood at the helm of the Second Chance, now their home as much as their workplace. The lighthouse keeper's cottage waited above, but they'd chosen to spend their first night as husband and wife on the water that had brought them together. "Look," Sophia pointed to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn were appearing. "Perfect timing for the morning run." Jack smiled, understanding completely. They were both their father's children, after all. The work was part of who they were, as vital as the love they shared. The Second Chance slipped quietly from her berth, Sophia at the wheel while Jack checked the sustainable fishing gear. Other boats were already heading out, their crews offering waves and calls of congratulation. The morning felt both entirely new and comfortably familiar, like the wedding ring on his finger, a fresh symbol of things his heart had known for months. As the sun rose over Port Haven, painting the water in shades of possibility, Jack watched his bride navigate them toward the fishing grounds. The harbor behind them was safe, the future ahead wide open. Every wave brought them further into the life they'd built together, where tradition and progress, love and duty, past and future, all flowed as naturally as the tides themselves. Some called it a fairy tale ending, the corporate heir and the fisherman's. Sun, healing old wounds and building new dreams. But standing there on his boat, watching the morning light catch Sophia's ring as she guided them home, Jack knew it wasn't an ending at all. It was just another beginning, in a harbour full of second chances.